Today I want to talk about something that I call the Forrest Gump effect. Now you have to know the movie to get into the mechanics of a character like Forrest Gump, who I believe is an embodiment of wild success. So, if you're interested in the Forrest Gump effect, this kind of stuff is going to blow your mind, because you'll want to be just like him, this fictitious character that success is drawn to. So stick around. Tom Hanks did a really good job in that movie, Forrest Gump. The audience fell in love with him. And basically the world fell in love with him. He was able to do all of these things that seemed miraculous. Met the president. I mean, it's been so long since I saw the movie, but he accomplished things that your normal average person would find miraculous. How do you achieve the impossible when you're so slow-witted and ignorant? Forrest Gump had no capacity to understand himself as special needs. He was labeled that, kind of ignorant. He was labeled an ignoramus. And even if he was told that he was an ignoramus, he was too innocent to see himself that way. He didn't have something was erased from him that he could not label himself. He couldn't label himself special needs, ignorant, slow-witted. He couldn't even accept the label of annoying. Lieutenant Dan, if you remember in that movie, Lieutenant Dan tried to instill in Forrest that he was a pest. So the character had no capacity to understand himself from the outside in. He only knew himself from the inside out. Although he wouldn't be able to talk about it in those terms. Essentially, the character of Forrest Gump is the person truly without an ego. Yet he had an ego. We could see that he was a separate person. He, however, could not understand that. His was a kind of ignorance that you would call blissful. He didn't have the capacity to understand hate, And that's a clue right there. He didn't have the capacity. Cap means head. He had no head. His head was in the clouds. And so, with that kind of self-effacing personality, he stumbled into success. Big doofus. Clumsily becomes famous. Only because he couldn't have an ego. So that's what an egoless person looks like. To the person with an ego, you look like Forrest Gump. Silly. And so Forrest Gump is doing silly, stupid things like running across the country over and over and over again. That's unreasonable. We're talking about the various kinds of shrimp dishes while his business blows up. Pulling in wealth blindly. Winning awards like a big fool. And so this kind of success is what real success is. It is attracted to efficacious behavior. But the thing that's so weird to me, and what I've been contemplating, is that you can act like Forrest Gump and we'd see through you. We would see that you're trying to be the type with their head in the clouds. See, what I find so interesting about the Forrest Gump effect, that you can't copy it, nor imitate it, nor pin it down. So, in other words, Forrest Gump never tried to be successful and lovable and famous and successful and wealthy. He never tried. He didn't even try to love. Poor thing, he couldn't help it. His head was in the clouds. He had no face. That's because he got the gist of life without understanding that he was the gist of life. And the word gist means the je ne sais quoi, the essence of life, the gist. And if you probe the word gist, it's a French word jaisir, which means these actions lie. Meaning surface actions. So success sticks to someone with no surface. I find that blows my mind. Because you can't even pin that down. You can't say, okay, well, I'm going to be self-effacing now. Because you are self-effacing. Every person is self-effacing. They do not know how to see their own eyes. There is no surface. It's just that it seems like most of us are in the dark. That's a kind of self-efficacy. You're in the dark. Can't predict the future. Don't know what's happening. in the weeds. That's called paranoia. Burying your head in the sand, protecting yourself, running, fleeing, avoiding. The kind of self-efficacy that Forrest had was a head in the clouds type of thing. So you're either buried in the sand or your head is in the cloud. One is ignorance is bliss. The other is ignorance is a dark, scary place. How do we become this? Where we're not afraid of the dark. Paranoia. And that we've been blinded by the light. Paradise. I can't try to be like Forrest Gump. And I also can't do this thing called not trying. Don't try so hard. Like you can scrape off the ego. Like you can erase the surface, which is what self-effacing means. Erasing the surface so that nothing sticks to it. But you have no surface. But you just realize it. So success sticks to people like Forrest Gump, who never wanted it. How do you want to not want? How do you keep your head in the clouds? When your head is in the clouds, you're in the dark. One way or another, ignorance is right there. Nobody knows the future. Either that blows your mind or scares you to death. And those two things are strangely the same. When fear becomes thrilling, it's like riding a roller coaster. You're scared to death. You're going to pee your pants. But you do it anyway. Fearlessness or faith is a kind of titillating, beckoning thrill. And a person like Forrest Gump knows no difference between faith and fear. They've bridged the gap in some kind of ignorance. They've bridged the gap between the dark ignorance and the light ignorance. They realize there's no surface, period. Then you explore both polarities. And ignorance is bliss or ignorance is torture. Either way, you are either honestly like Forrest Gump, you're trying to be like Forrest Gump, or you are looking at Forrest Gump and saying, you ignorant fool. But the truth knows that Forrest can't help it. Poor thing. He can't help but be successful. He cannot know hate. He cannot know that he's annoying. He cannot know what people think about him. He cannot not care what people think about him. He doesn't have the capacity. Head. How do you lose your head in the clouds? I wish I could teach you. I wish I could teach you how to be like Forrest Gump. But you can envision how loving he was, not by his own doing, not because he tried. He didn't try to love everybody. It wasn't an effort. He didn't apply any effort to anything he did. He was that. He was the embodiment of Christ. Not the very God, but the repeatable version of Christ, which is what everybody is. And that's the destiny. To lose your head. To fall head over heels. And to be in love for no reason. To express joy in a soft, kind way, and to not take yourself seriously. See, Forrest couldn't even take himself seriously or make light of himself. He couldn't do that. You see? He neither made light of himself nor heaviness out of himself. He couldn't help but be himself because he didn't have a head. And we perceive that as slow-witted, foolish, but that's the genius in disguise. And Tom Hanks did a great job of playing the foolish genius, the evil genius. And in that space, success chases you down. And again, you're not trying not to try. You see? I don't know how to tell you how to do that. I don't know how to teach that. I don't even know if I'm like that. But maybe I aspire to be that way. Maybe that's my destiny. And I have no capacity either. It's a whimsical sort of thing. It's a foolish sort of thing to have your head in the clouds. But that's where you're headed. You'll always be ignorant. But in that version of truth, ignorance is bliss. Everything is nothing and nothing is everything. In that version, you just can't help it. We just are. That's the irreducible state. In the irreducible state, you'll come across as an idiot. They're the people that think they have it all together. They'll think you to be a nutcase, a special case, slow-witted. A push-around. How does one catch that updraft like that? And get carried away. Not in success, but just get carried away, lost in love. How does that happen? How do we make that happen? We become like Forrest Gump. Imagine aspiring to be dim-witted and slow, an ignoramus, but wildly successful and full of love and life. Blinded by light, or blinded by dark. Ignorance is ultimately bliss. That's the Forrest Gump effect. I hope you enjoyed these insights. My name is Ryan. Thank you for watching. Please check out my blog. It's called mymorningmotivator.com.